Hey, if it like YouTube, welcome back to another episode. Okay, so as you can see, the tank's been moved yet again. And basically what happened was the wife just wasn't happy with the tank being where it was, said that it just didn't make the room flow right, everything looked weird. She didn't like where the seating was, and so for a happy wife and a happy life, I decided to move the tank, and I have to say, she was right. The tank looks way better here. This is where the black pearl used to be, so got everything shifted, and I must admit, this does look a million times better than it did. So this kind of held me back a wee bit, but now that it's in place, we can get going. Right, let's go. So aquascaping, you either love it or you hate it. Where do I stand on it? I think I love it, but then sometimes I hate it. So just looking at nature for inspiration, and I you know how much I love islands. So I think for my aquascape I'll maybe create islands, but I'll stick them together to create more of a natural look, if that makes sense. I'm not interested in any of that negative space aquascapes with thin bitties going here, there and away. I just didn't like the look of that. I'm wanting something a bit more natural and with lots of caves and places for fish to hide, and for fish basically to get out of one another's way. So if one's getting harassed, there's plenty of bitties that it can get away and it loses its line of sight. So that's the idea. I mean, this is my very first aquarium. Some of you may remember this. This was the Dual Vision 450. Yep, I loved that tank and made a few mistakes with that one. And here's the aquascape I had on the Black Pearl. And it's something similar to this that I'm kind of wanting. Something with lots of caves and places for the fish to hide, plus plenty of opportunity to place corals. Learning from mistakes I made on the Dead Man's Chest, I made this aquascape far too high, and it kind of restricted what I could have on the top because it was just getting blasted by the power heads. So this time around, make it a bit lower. Okay, so I thought I'd have a play about with the rocks. So I've just stacked the rocks to try and create something visually appealing and that the fish are going to enjoy, with lots of caves and stuff. However, I think the biggest issue with this scape is the fact it's so tall, and I really don't want a tall aquascape in the new tank, because I want maybe about halfway so that there's plenty of room for the acropora to grow up into the water column. After all, this is just the foundation. Right, so stacking the rocks didn't really work. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to try this Aquaforest stonefix and give that a bash, see how I get on with that, see if I can create maybe like a few islands that I can put together. And using this stonefix, I should be able to create something pretty good. Now, I normally use epoxy and acrylic rods as my preferred method of aquascaping. However, I thought I'd give this stuff a try, and to be honest, it's pretty good. Like, it sets really quick, a couple of hours. It should be rock solid, and I should be able to lift it up, no problem. So we'll see how this goes. Right, well, the stonefix didn't really go according to plan. I just didn't like the shapes and aquascapes I was getting with it, so went back to my bread and butter, is the acrylic rod, drilling the rocks, and this is what I've come up with. And this is getting really close to what I think I'm looking for. I'm absolutely kind of loving this, and I mean, obviously these are just like 4 separate islands I've created with the acrylic rod. Now, when I transfer this to the tank, it's not going to look exactly like this, but this is just kind of giving me an idea of something that I'm wanting to create in the tank. So lots of caves, and it's not too high. The yellow tape on the back of the box is the water level which will be in the tank, so it's like about halfway like what I was wanting. So it's not 100% there, but I'm much happier with this aquascape that I've created using the acrylic rods, as opposed to what I managed to get with just stacking the rocks and using the Aquaforest stuff, stonefix. So yeah, we're getting there. My aquascapes, I can see it in my mind what I'm wanting. I just haven't been able to get it exactly what I want so far. Now, while I've got all the rock out, something I've been wanting to do for about 10 years, when I first seen this video, and I think a lot of reefers who have kind of copied this idea, this is probably where they saw it first. So this guy, Carl Swabby, he owns Frag Factory. I watched a video on, I can't even remember what it's called, reefvideos.com, and about 10, 11 years ago I seen it, and it was such a cool way of mounting corals.
A lot of my corals are pegged onto the rock just so that I can move them around as they grow. If I get a new piece, I'm always able to squeeze it into the tank, no matter how packed it is, by pegging it. I also drill holes all over the rock so that I can peg the corals, so that I can put them exactly where I want them to be, not where they have to be, because in most cases people just put corals because that's the only place they'll fit. With this, it allows me to put them where I want it to be. And that's why you can see the Capricornuses hanging off the cliff. And a lot of the corals you see on the side here, those are pegged from sideways and stuff like that. So there's the peg there, you can see how it's pegged. And the rock is also drilled as well, right? So I'll just see if I can, there you go, see? It's back in its place.
So it's a really good idea, especially for Acropora. And I seen this video, like I said, about 10, 11 years ago, and I always thought, yeah, it's a great idea, I'm going to do that, and I never ever did it. So since I've got all the islands out and ready to go into the main display, I thought, do you know what, I'm going to do it. So just grabbing my drill, and I'm going to drill a heap of holes in all the rock, and then that way I'll be prepared for when I do start getting my Acropora frags, and I'll be able to move them about just like Carl, and put the Acropora where I want them to be, and if they're not happy, nice and easy to move it to a different location to where maybe the coral will be much happier. So I'll just get this all drilled up, and then we'll get the rock moved over to the display tank. Right, that's the aquascape done. Really happy with how it's turned out. So, like I said before, this time around I didn't want to go for like a separate island look, and I definitely didn't want a negative space aquascape. Not really keen on them, to be honest with you. And I just wanted to have plenty of room for the Acropora, since this will be an SPS dominated tank. In fact, I think it's just going to be SPS only. So yeah, lots of swim throughs, lots of caves, and the reason for this is with the tangs, I noticed that in Dead Man's Chest, having just the one island coming off of that one rock, everything else was kind of floating. It meant that fish that are trying to get away from other fish, there's no like getaways. So what I mean by that is there's no areas like what I've created here, for instance, right? Let's say there's a fish getting chased. It can go under this arch here, shoot out there, and then it's out of sight from the other fish that was chasing it. And that fish then gets relief. Whereas in Dead Man's Chest, the flame angel, he chases the chromies, he chases the little beach, the azure damsel, and it basically means that those fish never come out. And normally you would see green chromies swimming about. Well, I had 7 and I'm down to 2, and it's not because they've picked another off. I think it's because of the flame angel. So they pretty much have nowhere to go, but obviously with Dead Man's Chest there's all these little caves and hidey holes. So the azure damsel manages to get away, but the poor chromies, one of them just hides in a rock at the bottom and the other one hides at the top near the Duncans. So we're seeing that. Again, that's not really what you want. I want this to look as natural as possible. And again, it's just a glass box with rock and stuff, but I still want to see more natural behaviours. And to be honest, I think it is more pleasing to see a fish going in and out of caves and stuff than going round and round one single negative space thing. But hey, each to their own. We all have different tastes, and I mean, I'm absolutely in love with the Aquascape here, but you might look at it and think it's crap and not like it at all, and that's fine. Each to their own, you know. And it's weird because it definitely looks better in person than it does on the camera, which is kind of weird. But what I've got to remember is the last Aquascape on Dead Man's Chest, I made that rock work look amazing and I loved it. But what I seem to forget is it's not about the rock work. The rock work's not meant to look good, it's just the foundation, and it's the corals that you put on it that make the tank. So this time around I've deliberately tried to keep the Aquascape really low because I've got a bad habit of building my Aquascapes right up high and then only leaving 4 inches to the surface. So this time around I've deliberately left plenty of room for the corals to grow, and all of this rock work will disappear in time and it'll just be jam-packed with coral. That's the plan anyway. So right, that's the rock work. Really happy. Lots of room for coral, as you can see, and plenty of getaways. And I've also this time around left plenty of room for the fish to swim around the back, because on Dead Man's Chest, as you'll know, it's like the rock's pretty much hard up against the back in a lot of places, especially up against the weir. So I've left it open this time, and we're having this, once they get the sand in, I think this will create like a nice alcove sort of place. So it should look pretty good. Now, I think there's about 35 kilos of rock in here, and I've still got about 35 kilos of rock left. I couldn't actually manage to use it all. I didn't want to use it all. And the only piece I was, because like I did build all these islands and stuff, and I used Marco rock as the foundation, but I really didn't want to use the Marco rock, and I've only got one piece right in the back island there, that's it. The rest of it's Fiji, so really happy with that. And I've got another 11 kilos of rock to go in here, which is live rock, which is basically this rock, which I picked out a few select pieces, I stuck it in the wee 60-litre tank, and I cycled it, and that tank's been doing fantastic. And I took some coralline algae from Dead Man's Chest, crushed that up, put that in, and a lot of the rock's actually got some coralline growing on it now, so I'll add that into here as well in various bits. Probably thinking maybe just a couple bits in here, but if there's not enough room for the live rock and it's going to start spoiling my Aquascape that I've got, then I may just add it in the sump, or I'll just like remove a dead piece, stick a live piece as an alternative, and just do that in various bits. See how it goes. But with this open bit here, I'll maybe add like a wee live rock island there. Something, we'll figure it out. But anyway, enough of my jibber jabber. So So what I'll do is I'll fill this up. I'll use this float because I'm going to leave this running, so this will fill up and then it'll stop before it heads down into the sump. I'll cycle this rock, get it all cycled. Then once the nitrate shoots up, I'll do a big water change, fill her back up with fresh salt water, and yep, that'll be it. And then we'll start filling up the sump, and then we'll see how it goes from there. So yep, that's the plan. Right, let's go and turn this bad boy on. Hey, she's getting wet finally. Happy days. So this is probably going to take a day or so to fill up, but hey, it's finally getting wet. Okie dokie. Right, I'll come back once it's filled up with water. Okay, so guess what I forgot? I forgot to put the blooming sand in. Now I was going to cycle this rock without putting the sand in, but the sand I've got is just dry sand. It's dead sand. It's no live sand. So here's it. The sand I've went for. Right, since it's not live sand, you can rinse it, so I'm giving it all a really good rinse. Swished it about the bucket a few times and then just left this hose blasting it until the water runs clear like this. Once it gets to this stage, then I just fire it straight into the tank. Right, that's all the sand rinsed and now in the tank. Really happy with how this looks. Something a bit different to the Carib Sea stuff that I'm always using. And this is really nice and bright, and something a bit different. Now again, it's not going to stay this perfect white, because pretty much every sand always changes colour, so no doubt it'll end up looking the same as the Carib Sea stuff in the future anyway. But for just now, I'm really happy with how it looks, and I've got a 1-inch sand bed all over, so happy with that. The water's back on, now I'll just leave it to fill up. Okay shipmates, that'll do it for this episode. I think this one's gone on a bit long. So, yep, that's it for now. Till the next one, thanks for watching. Bye bye.